It's a great pleasure. I've been talking to a few of you already, and say that I've been here before, and it's always very good. I mean, the kind of interactions that it offers is very good and also very useful. You know, it's always good to have some feedback on the kind of things we are proposing, and I'm going to talk today about the approach developed by Négawatt in terms of energy scenarios, and including, of course, and I'll tell you a lot more about it, a sufficiency perspective on the energy system. I'll talk about our latest scenario for France. I'll talk about a scenario we developed on a European level, and then we will have some discussion. I should start, of course, by telling you a bit about Négawatt and the Négawatt group. There's a Négawatt, Association Négawatt, which is a non-profit group of experts with only individuals as members. We don't have organizations involved as such. It's a think tank on energy that was created more than 20 years ago. And it now has almost 20 employees and works also with a core group of around 50 volunteers that help developing the scenarios, spreading it in policy making with the media and so on. And altogether, we have more than 1,500 members, almost, well, essentially in France. The goal of Négawatt from the beginning has been to produce energy scenarios, looking for sustainability and helping to design, to think about policies and measures, and therefore advocating for our own proposals, but also engaging in the public debate with other stakeholders that bear other proposals which we challenge or discuss or try to improve. I spoke of a group because it's not only Association Négawatt. We have created back in 2009 an Institut Négawatt, which is a 100% subsidiary, but which is mostly developing consultancy studies with local authorities, with businesses, with the focus on helping implementing and massifying the energy transition as we see it as Négawatt. And Institut Négawatt is also helping new businesses to develop, and there are two, but the second one is only very recent. The main one is called DOREMI. That means Dispositif Opérationnel de Rénovation des Maisons Individuelles. For those who understand French, it focuses on thermal retrofitting of individual houses and how households can be, how to facilitate this for households. And this is kind of symbolic of one very important thing for us, which is to remain rooted, anchored in the concrete field, and develop scenarios and develop ideas that remain realistic in practical terms. The second important perspective, of course, is that we have increasingly developed, mostly since COP21, where this is really because COP came to France, in a way. So this is when we got involved very much and developed a more international perspective, and that was the starting point to later develop this idea of a European scenario, which I will tell you about later, and to also start being involved in various European research projects. The most important one being that Fulfill project, which is just over right now. I mean, we had the final public event last month, and which was about developing ideas, concepts, recommendations, and research, of course, on sufficiency-based change of lifestyle to meet 1.5 degrees objectives. And I don't have any slides about the Fulfill project as such, but I will probably use some of the material we developed and findings in the discussion if you are interested about it. So that's it about the Négawatt group, and then I want to try to frame the way we understand the energy context and the way we try to develop a way how to respond to the sustainability challenge of that energy raises. And I want to start with this. I like to show these pictures. I often forgot to ask you to think about energy and what kind of representations it highlights before I show that, so too late. But I'm almost sure that when you hear energy, the kind of things that come to your mind are either those on the left and or those on the right. Meaning either the resources, energy resources we draw from the environment, which is called primary energy, I mean the fossil fuels, coal, oil, natural gas, renewables, uranium for nuclear power. And on the right, it's equipments, vehicles, appliances that use a transformed form of energy to deliver services. Light, heat, mechanical force, and information, and the energy that sustains information technologies. My point here is that there is actually a lot of transformations that are involved between resources and services, and this is what we call the energy system. The energy system is all that set of transformation, transport, conversion, storage of energy in different forms that allows to deliver services based on primary resources. And I'm emphasizing that it is really a complex system which involves a lot of technical, industrial, economic choices. And this energy system is framing society. If you want to, I mean, if I want to try to convince you of what that means, just think of the car. Individual car and the ownership of individual car is framing our lifestyle, is framing our urban planning, is framing our daily time, the household's budget, to a large extent our economy, and so on and so forth. So, and there was not an explicit choice at one point in history, 1 century ago, to say, okay, let's organize all our mobility based on this, the ownership of individual cars. It was a kind of progressive historical construct, but other choices could have been made to organize our mobility differently and possibly at least as effectively or possibly even more. But just to say, there are technical economic choices involved all around, all the time, that frame the energy system, and through the energy system frame our society. And this is important because the second dimension of this systemic approach is, of course, that the system I'm talking about, so the energy or the economic system, is of course not sustainable. I'm not going through details of all those issues, you know them, but of course climate change is central. What I want to highlight here is that we should not only focus on climate change. It is obviously a pressing and urgent issue, but sustainability is not only about low carbon economies. We have to think of technological risks, depletion of resources. One thing that is missing, so sorry, I've updated it in other presentations, I forgot to do it in that one. What is missing? Well, tell me. The overarching sustainability issue that is not mentioned here, as vital as climate change. Yeah, the loss of biodiversity is missing and should clearly appear on that picture. Access to energy, both on a world scale, with more than 1 billion people still not having access to electricity worldwide, but also in developed countries like ours, with more than 10 million people not having, being in energy poverty, and geopolitical tension and so on. One important thing to keep in mind is that energy is never alone in pressing on those issues. Agriculture, metallic resources, chemical pollutions, and so on and so forth are all involved in that systemic and sustainability. So the picture is we are faced with a system that is intrinsically not sustainable and needs to be changed. And as I said, the energy system is framing our consumptions and productions pattern, our social life, our lifestyles, and so on. If we want to change the energy system to make it more sustainable, it's kind of unavoidable that we change things in the production, the consumption patterns, and the lifestyles, and many other things. We need to consider deep changes, which is where the wording of energy transition comes from. Transition from one system to another one, and that means deep changes. And therefore, I mean, our global aim with Négawatt is really to project through modeling and development of scenarios, to project changes, pathways that would lead us to a more sustainable, fairer, more peaceful society. And in that sense, although most of us are engineers or have a kind of scientific culture, we also have architects, we have sociologists and so on, but the basis of the work is really looking at the engineering of transforming the energy system, but we really acknowledge, fully acknowledge that we are aiming, in a sense, for a political project, because the kind of transformations we are talking about are transformations of society. So it's a project for society. And then we acknowledge that we try to develop this project based on core values that we share as members of Négawatt. I'm not going through them. Basically, humanist values, you could say. We are thinking about how to put this into action, altogether in terms of a long-term vision that is appealing enough for stakeholders, people to engage in the kind of transformation. So a long-term vision, ambitious, but also a realistic pathway to get there. That's where modeling and step-by-step modeling comes in. You could think of very desirable visions, but if you don't know, if you don't have the map, I mean, it's pointless, of course. So how to get there, how to start from here, and that is helping us to think about what is needed in terms of policies and measures, the kind of policies and measures that we need to implement in the short term to meet some long-term urgencies, like climate change. So that's what we are trying to do through our modeling and scenario. And in the latest scenario that we published in 21, which was the 5th one for France, we also develop a kind of comprehensive reasoning to relate our scenarios and the way we are framing it and the way we are assessing it to the matrix of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Not to say this is a perfect matrix, far from that. There's a lot to discuss there, but at least it has it brings two very useful things. First, it kind of encompasses all sustainability issues, not only environmental, but also social, economic, and even the governance issues. And the second one, it's framed and thought about as, and that the wording of UN, the UN itself, as an integrated and indivisible matrix, which means, okay, you have to address, for instance, Sustainable Development Objective 13, which is about climate change, but when implementing options to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, you need to think about the impacts on all the other sustainable development goals. And this is important, as I'll show you in a minute. So the political goal of Négawatt is to provide expertise on sustainable pathways based on this approach. And then we think that the basic principle, we thought of the basic principle of a systematic way to consider possible changes. And that is what I'm going to explain now through what we call an energy chain, which is the series of transformation that is involved between an energy, a primary resource, in that case oil, and a final use, a service, which will be lighting. And it's just to highlight all the changes that are involved and think about it. First of all, of course, we don't use oil as such. I mean, you need to refine it. At first stage of losses come there. Then, if you want some light, you need to deliver electricity. So you need to burn the oil in a thermal plant with a lot of losses there again. You need to deliver it through the grid to the end user. Again, smaller but still not negligible losses. And that is what we call the final energy, the energy that is billed, that is delivered and billed to the end users. Usually national statistics and therefore national policy making stop there, because it's too difficult to account for what's happening beyond your meter, or what's happening once you've tapped fuel from the at the station for your car. But a lot of things still happen in the energy chain there. The first one is the conversion of this final energy that is delivered to you into a useful form of energy. We don't really consume electricity. I mean, if we don't have appliances that turn it into something useful, it doesn't bring any service. So we need, for instance, light bulbs. And that example, of course, is on purpose. I'm not sure if you know how much energy this is losing. An old-fashioned light bulb like that. Yeah, that's right. About 95% of the electricity is lost as heat, and only 5% delivered as light. Which means, I mean, this is a voluntary, very bad example. I mean, most of our appliances and so on are more efficient than that. But just to show there is a potential to in the conversion, and if you change for LED lights, I mean you go for a 6, 7, 8-fold increase in your efficiency. We are not done yet. There's an issue with how we design and dimension our appliances, equipments, vehicles, and so on. Illustrated here with very nice lights, urban lights. We call them lampadaires boules. Very nice, nothing to say from an aesthetic perspective, but completely absurd from an energetic one, because most of the light produced goes up when it's needed down. That means losses again. And finally, how we use appliances. This is an example of an urban light that is well designed with a reflector, that is equipped with an efficient light bulb, and still it is using electricity for no service, as the artificial light provides nothing more than the natural one. And this is what really brings us to put forward that we can't really think of the kind of changes that are needed if we don't reverse the traditional perspective that is starting with resources. Are energy resources available? That is the main question that is always asked. The reason for developing an energy system is not to use resources, of course. It's to deliver services. So we need to rethink the whole system, starting by redesigning and redimensioning our energy services. And that is what we call sufficiency, and it comes first in our concept. It comes as a first step to address the changes. Once you redesign the nature and volume of services that you consider needed, then you can implement efficiency so that the amount of resources you will need for your chosen level of service will be as low as possible. You reduce losses all along. And then you can think of substitution. Substitution between resources, which can only come if you master the volume of resources that you need through sufficiency and efficiency. And substitution is key because it is a complete change compared to what humanity has always been doing, which has been an addition of resources. We have not phased out wood because we developed oil, because we accessed fossil fuels. We just added the use of fossil fuels to a large extent to the use of wood, and the same applied until now, mostly. We can see actually the tipping point right now for renewables, at least in the electric sector, but the same has happened until now, which the renewables and nuclear power only come on top of a use of fossil fuels that is still increasing worldwide because energy demand is increasing faster than we can develop renewables and nuclear power until now. Again, there's such a dynamics for renewables that this is changing, but the more we want to substitute, which is obviously crucial for when we want to go for quick sustainability. I mean, at least fixing the climate issue as soon as we can. That means fastest substitution, and fastest substitution only comes through efficiency and sufficiency. I voluntarily talk about substitution and not talking about what kind of energy should substitute to another. I'll come to that, of course, in a minute. So this really leads us to framing our whole approach in that sufficiency, efficiency, renewables framework, SER framework, that has made its way, for instance, through the in the latest IPCC assessment report. So that is one of the acknowledged ways to redesign the energy system in a sense that would be more sustainable. So it's start with addressing the prioritizing and resizing the services, and then reducing the losses through efficiency and substituting. And in our view, if we want to substitute less sustainable energy resources by more sustainable ones, that means substituting stock-based ones by flow-based ones, which means for the stock-based fossil fuels, of course, the unsustainability of which is obvious with climate change, but that also means nuclear power, which is depleting a resource and creating specific risks. And flow-based resources are renewables that don't deplete any stock and are using natural flows as sun, wind, and water. Okay, so the idea then is to apply this approach systematically to an energy system, which for a French scenario will be the French one. So I just give you a glimpse of what it looks like today. Very briefly, our energy system is based on almost 90% of stock-based energies. For a part nuclear power, but it looks big there, but there are 2/3 of losses in converting this nuclear energy in nuclear power plants into electricity. So it's not that big if you look at the other side at the uses and fossil fuels. And I mean, just to give you a number, about 60% of the final energy we are using in France comes from imported fossil fuels, which is of course better than the world average, which is closer to 80%, but still a lot too much, of course, in the face of climate urgencies and independency. So we start with those numbers, and then we try to develop a modeling and a scenario that is both comprehensive and consistent, which comes first with the idea that the modeling we are developing is mostly physical. It's not based on euros, it's not based on representing the economy, for one very simple reason, which is that the economic signals today clearly don't put us on the right track. So it's not by trying to represent what the economy is implementing that we can foresee a sustainable pathway. The other way around. We think that we can develop pathways that make sense from a physical perspective, that deliver on the physical, like planetary boundaries, for instance, the kind of physical limitations that we are facing, and that it's much easier to adjust the economy to physical constraints than the other way around. I mean, it sounds obvious, but I mean, we were like, you know, we were laughed at 10 years ago when we were selling that, because the mainstream prospectivists and economists were were convinced that they needed economic modeling to develop sound pathways, and that's where, for instance, all the reasoning about carbon price being the single bullet to address sustainability comes from. I forgot to say that this physical modeling combines 3 models. One by Négawatt, which is addressing energy and greenhouse gas emissions issues. One that Négawatt also developed, but that we developed for ADEME, the French Agency on Energy, and that ADEME is also using, called Négawatt, which develops a complete vision of the raw material footprint of the French economy. And one called AFTER, developed by another NGO called Solagro, which is roughly develops the same approach than Négawatt, but on agriculture, forestry, land use, and food. Then when it comes to the geographic perimeter of the modeling, we are focusing on France as a whole, but we increasingly take into account the kind of things that the national trajectory means for territories, how this could be compatible with meaningful development strategies in each, in the variety of territories that we have in France, and also, of course, taking care of how this national trajectory fits into a European vision and is sound when projected on a worldwide scale. And finally, for the time frame, we're still considering 2050 as the main deadline. I say still because there was a lot of discussion, because of course compared to our first scenario in 2003, we have 20 years less to project a sustainable change of the system, but so that is a lot more challenging. But 2050 is the deadline to meet carbon neutrality, to be in line with COP21. So we still have this as an objective, but increasingly we are considering more long-term objectives, long-term sustainability issues, and try to think of a modeling of the longer term. And the modeling is a detailed year-on-year description of the trajectory, which allows us to discuss, as I already mentioned, policies and measures, how deep, where are the priorities, how deep changes, what kind of changes they should try to implement, and how deep and how fast, and so on. Just a glimpse on the modeling principle, but I think I should be fast on that. We start, as I already, in line with our global approach and reasoning. The modeling starts with final uses, like heat, mobility, specific uses of electricity, and describes them through all the sectors of the economy, and that allows to go backwards to the kind of energy carriers like electricity, fuel, wood that we could be used, and eventually to primary resources. Our modeling includes, and sorry that this is in French, but includes an hourly balance of the electric system, just to make sure that the shift to renewables in the electric system is secure. And then, once we have this energy modeling, we have some modules that allow to consider greenhouse gas emissions, raw material footprint, some pollutions, and some economic indicators like costs and jobs. But this comes as ex post assessment, although of course there could be feedback, and we go. There are a few rounds of running, but again, it is very important for us to start with this physical modeling. I told you about the sustainable development objectives and how climate mitigation options are not equivalent from that perspective. This is a summary of a complete chapter in IPCC's special report on 1.5 degrees pathways back in 2018. Again, the point is not to go into details, just to show you how things look when you cumulate the expected positive impact of different options to reduce greenhouse gas emissions on the whole of the 16 other Sustainable Development Goals. So that's a cumulative score with a central value and bars that signal where there's more uncertainty. And all this is based on a review, of course, of scientific literature. And it mostly shows, and I don't want to get into more details there, it mostly shows how they are not equivalent, the options are not equivalent when you look at central values, and how the way they are implemented can have a lot of impact on their global sustainability outcome, depending on countries, depending on places, depending on markets, and a lot of other things. So, there's a complex set of concerns to keep in mind beyond this rather simple graph. But the main point is they are not equivalent, and you need to consider the systemic impact on sustainability of the options you are playing with. That really led us to develop what we call a systemic merit order, when we take into account these sustainability issues, when we take also into account the consistency of the options between them. I mean, biomass, for instance, can't be used at the same time for bioenergy or for increasing natural carbon footprints. You have some trade-offs, of course. Taking into account scalability of options, and affordability by stakeholders, resilience, and many other issues. But again, it's very important to consider this. And this brings me to the different levels we consider, and I'll start with the, I won't go backwards from the services to resources. I will start with resources this time, so that to focus on the services part at the end. When it comes to resources, the main message is it's not about availability of renewables. We have plenty of renewable energy available. The issue is it's very diffuse. It's not concentrated as uranium, as fossil fuels. So the issue is whether we can use it as effectively through the territories and I mean in a much more decentralized way, and the answer is increasingly yes. But I mean, when you look at the global amount of energy we receive from the sun every year compared to the total our annual energy consumption, I mean, there's no issue. And that is also a lot more than proven reserves of stock-based energies. So that really explains our choice towards renewables as the substitution option. When it comes to efficiency, the first thing is to think about efficiency in gray energy. That means the energy that is used to manufacture goods, to build buildings. For instance, using wood is much better than using cement and steel from that perspective. So a lot of thinking must be developed there, and that also comes with some ideas about recycling, circular economy, and so on. The second important thing is the useful energy efficiency on the of the thermal performance of buildings, for instance, which is a crucial issue. I mean, there's no sound energy transition plan that doesn't address the need to comprehensively retrofit basically all our buildings, and not only retrofit them, but retrofit them to a high level of thermal performance. I mean, there's you can't solve the 2050 equation if you don't include that, especially in countries like ours. Then some efficiency on the conversion that I mentioned, the efficiency of heating systems, efficiency of motors in cars, efficiency of all the appliances, as well informed by the Energy Star system in the US or the energy labeling in the European Union. And you could also consider some efficiency on the primary energy level, for instance, developing combined heat and power production. Each time you burn something to generate electricity, you lose a lot of heat. So it makes sense to use that heat instead of just losing it. Use it to heat houses through urban heating system, or to feed industrial processes. So there's a lot that can be done on efficiency. And oh, that's wrong order. So sorry, this should have come before. Never mind. So I'll talk about sufficiency in just a minute. I hope, yes, it comes next. just backwards when it comes to the choice of the different options. I insisted on the systemic merit order. We also try to be very cautious about technological miracles. We are not against innovation, of course. We need innovation, and we think that innovations that can't be completely, that are not clear yet, can only come as, some of it, as good news to accelerate the energy transition. But the other way around, we don't want to develop plans that we would rely on technologies that we can't be sure will deliver on the right scale with, without unexpected and unacceptable impacts. So for this, we are using two different, we cross two different approaches. The first one is thinking about the, what we call, not we call, I mean the standard international technological readiness level and manufacturing readiness level. And we are using, we are including in our scenarios only technological options that are mature enough on those scales to be ready to be deployed massively in the coming decades. So we can be confident that it makes sense to put them in the scenario. But we also combine this with the environmental and social readiness level, which tries to address whether we are the potential impacts, social and environmental impacts, are well characterized, and if they are well characterized, if they can be considered acceptable or not. And that, for instance, is a reason to exclude of our scenarios carbon capture and storage, at least on a large scale, because it's not mature enough on both of those scales, or to exclude new exploratory ideas about small modular reactors in the nuclear field, for instance. So, coming back to my three main pieces of the sufficiency efficiency framework. Sufficiency, I will tell a bit more about this. The first one is we try to distinguish between different sufficiency levels, starting with what we call servicial sufficiency, which is in a way the easy part. It's using more sufficiently the existing appliances, vehicles, and so on. So that's like reducing the temperature of your heating system in your house. That we are talking there mostly of things that end users can do without any big change in the system. Although, when you start talking about reducing planned obsolescence, of course, we could make sure to not to buy a new mobile phone every year, 6 months, I don't know. But we could also ask for businesses to develop more robust equipment. The second lever is dimensional, and then we are talking about the design and dimension of equipment, the size of cars, the floor areas of buildings, and of course this, I mean, it has a lot of implications when it comes to the energy and resources consumption. But of course, this is not something that you or me could change alone. I mean, if you want to shift from the need to buy a big car that will be used for all the needs of your family, and therefore using a very big car alone in a city center, because it's the same car that you need when all the family goes on holiday. If you want to shift from this to using different cars through sharing systems and using very light cars in urban, in urban conditions, for instance, I mean, you need this to be supplied. And therefore, we are talking there of the need of a sufficiency supply policy, both from regulators and businesses. And the same applies to the organizational dimension of sufficiency, where we are talking about better sharing. So sharing equipment, again, could be organized on through individuals, but if you're talking about sharing cars, of sharing spaces in buildings, that needs to be organized. If you're talking about urban planning, so not sharing but collective organization, urban planning, so that we reduce the distances we need to access different services. So the opposite of what has been done over the past decades. Just to give you a number, in the 70s, French people used to work 3 kilometers away from home. Today, it's more than 15 kilometers away. And that, again, was not a deliberate choice, you know, oh, we all want to work far from home. It's just a result of different policies, different changes, urban spreading, for instance. So we again, this can only be changes, and the kind of transformations that we think are needed can only come through organization, policy making, and also changes in business models. We do not forget, of course, sufficiency on food and goods, because that is needed to meet the long-term objectives. I mean, this is mostly the same, but it's really to say there are a lot of policies that could relate to sufficiency making, and it's wrong to say, as some do, that we don't know how to implement this. There are a lot of this is a database set by German colleagues, which gathers more than 300 ideas of sufficiency-related policies. And finally, on sufficiency, I want to refer to that the definition that IPCC coined in the summary of its latest assessment report, which says sufficiency is about avoiding demand for energy, materials, land and water. So we find this kind of systemic approach regarding our resources, but the most important and interesting part is while delivering human well-being for all within planetary boundaries. I don't know if you are familiar with the donut economy approach, the idea that a safe economic space for humanity should lie between planetary boundaries and decent living conditions for all. This is what it's about, and that, I mean, really resound with the way we have developed an approach of sufficiency as a redistributive principle. Tackling energy poverty is part of a sufficiency policy, because sufficiency means reducing extravagant uses of energy, but also means addressing vital ones. Okay, so there's a lot of development of thinking on the social dimension. On the economic one, there's a lot of discussion. There's many people say, okay, sufficiency, ooh, I don't want to hear about it because that means degrowth. I mean, from the beginning, we have always said it's not about growth or degrowth, because GDP is just blind to the kind of changes that sufficiency means. I mean, GDP likes when you keep the light on in a room that you leave. It's good for GDP, but stupid. Okay, so the point is to make a difference between what really creates value and what does not, and therefore better aligning value creation with resource protection and sharing rather than resource predation and destruction. The most successful business models today in our liberal world are those who are the best at predating and destroying resources without covering the societal cost of it. So we need to change that. I'm coming, and I think I'm running a bit short of time, but I'll try. To the main orientations of the scenario. This all comes kind of naturally from what I've just described. So we have, for each sector, a lot of sufficiency-related assumptions, some efficiency-related, and some about substitution. You can see some examples here, but for instance, one very important assumption is to stabilize the square meters per inhabitant on a French level by 2050, which means obviously not preventing families to evolve as they do, which tends to decrease the average number of people per household, but to incentivize, for instance, the sharing of flats by students, or the sharing of a room by a retired person living in a family house to a student or to a young worker, so that we avoid the need. If we don't do that, we need 2 million more houses by 2050, which means, of course, from a land use, energy, and raw material resources perspective, something that is not compatible with sustainability. We have the same kind of reasoning for transports, starting with mobility and freight, reducing the distance traveled through better urban planning, increasing the number of people per car, reducing air travel, because that is a field where we don't have any substitution option really, reducing the transported tonnage, better filling trucks, and of course some modal shift and improvement of the efficiency of vehicles. A lot of them becoming electric, but not all of them, because that would shift the oil issue to a lithium one, basically. Again, a lot of assumptions in the industry, and I'll let you go through some details. Maybe I should just comment this one. We thought about the need to relocate some of the industry, but not all of it, because not all of the industrial production makes sense in a long-term vision of energy transition. We don't need to relocate cars that are useless, for instance. So we really looked into what is worth relocating and how this could be implemented. For instance, for textile, if you want to relocate textile production, you need to shift from quantity to quality, because we can't compete with the low quality production in other parts of the world. But we can project a 30% reduction in volumes because the textile would be of a better quality, which actually means a stable value. So the global chiffre d'affaires. Okay, the global outcome for the sector would be roughly stable, because the quality would compensate the loss of quantity, which means a lot could be relocated in France, and because it's relocated in France and of a better quality, a lot more could be recycled than today. So that's just an example of the kind of virtuous circle that we can think about. I'm not discussing agriculture and forestry because I'm not a specialist enough. Just a quick word on renewables. We foresee a development of bioenergies that are needed, of course, to develop. We can't rely only on electric renewables. That's the key message. But we need to be careful about how we develop the use of biomass for energy, taking into account agricultural needs for food, for raw materials, and the issue of carbon sinks. We develop a lot of electric energy, but in a balanced way, where we are careful for not, I mean, with the impact of wind power on landscape, for instance. There is, in our scenario, by 2050, 1/3 less wind units than today in Germany, just to give you a frame. And we also make sure that the development of photovoltaics doesn't lead to land take on agriculture or forest, but is using, for instance, loose industrial land. We also, I mean, there are some other energy involved, but not that much because of our standing point on innovation. I mean, we don't trust in a strong development of new marine renewables, for instance. Complete phase out of fossil fuels and a controlled nuclear descent. I won't get into details of that important part. I just on purpose put some slides about it, but we think I mean, our point is nuclear is not sustainable enough to go for new reactors in our plan, and we focus on how to manage the phase out of the nuclear fleet, which will be something very difficult in any case. And I put some slides which I didn't want to comment anyway on the electric, I mean the specific pathway for the electric system. When it comes to the main results, so we combine efficiency, sufficiency, renewables, and that comes to roughly a 50% reduction of energy consumption, of final energy consumption on the national level, which we can address through a tripling of renewables, and therefore coming by 2050 to a 100% local renewables supply of our economy. This, again, those are slides that I put for you and not to comment. I will comment this one. We think this brings multiple and shared benefits. So through our modeling, we can show that it leads to carbon neutrality before 2050, both in terms of domestic emissions and in carbon footprint. It brings to 100% local renewable energy, as I already mentioned, and to 30% altogether reduction of the raw material footprint, with no crucial issue of a bottleneck on the strategic resources of any kind. But it also brings, although we could not completely quantify it, comprehensively quantify it through our scenario, it also brings good results on reduction of pressure on biodiversity, on quality of life, less pollution, healthier food, for instance. It brings some improvement in reduction of inequalities and tackling at least energy poverty. It is likely to create hundreds of thousands of jobs and to allow for some industrial relocation and local development in all territories. And it has also positive outcome on the governance level, both on local, national, and international scales. So that's it for the French scenario. And now a few words about the way we tried to implement the same on the European level. So this European scenario is called CLEVER, Collaborative Low Energy Vision for the European Region. It's collaborative to start with because we developed it with a network of partners, and that was really important for us. We really wanted to develop a bottom-up construct where we start with national pathways that are meaningful in national context, and then frame them into a European meaningful pathway, which is the opposite of what most of the energy scenario, European scenarios do. They start on the European level and then try to describe what it means on the national one. So that was very important, and we are thankful to all the partners that helped us developing that. Low energy, because it's based on the SCR framework, although I mean we had a lot of very interesting discussions with our partners on how what this means and how they understand it in the national context and so on, and that brought also some changes in the way we are seeing some of the details, and a vision which roughly combines the same kind of mix between ambition, the need for ambition on long-term goals like carbon neutrality, but realism on the way to implement changes and get there. It is a scenario that reaches carbon neutrality on a European level by 2040, shows that final energy consumption could be reduced by 55% on a European level, so roughly in the same line as Négawatt and other scenarios in other countries, and that we could get to 100% renewable supply on the European level by 2050 and 100% for the electric system by 2040 even. And all this through a lot of thinking on the mostly on the need for sufficiency that is not considered in any scenarios up to now on the European level, and of course the need for ambitious policies. I mentioned this reduction of energy demand. One important thing I want to highlight is that this came with a differentiated level of energy consumption reduction throughout European countries, because they start on a very different level. So we discussed with our partners in particular what we call sufficiency corridors, meaning that on indicators such as square meters per person of a household floor or kilometers covered per capita per year, we considered the existing differences, and we discussed how the national trajectories could converge between thresholds that would represent the planetary boundaries on one hand and decent living conditions on the other end. And that was really a very interesting work. We also thought of how sharing potentials and constraints when it comes to natural carbon sinks, potential for renewables is important and would help meet our collective objectives much better than if each country tries on a nationalistic basis to meet its own objective and activate its own levers. So cooperation and mutualization is crucial. And we also showed that the sufficiency, efficiency, renewable framework compared to other scenarios is likely to reduce some of the pressures. It helps to master the need for hydrogen to a level that is compatible with the pace of development, to reduce the material pressure, and also to keep electrification within reach. That is an important point. There's a lot of policy driving towards electrification as a kind of combination between the need to decarbonize and the want to keep, to stick to a vision of abundance, of energy abundance. The thing is, if you want to electrify, you will need to develop the grid, you will need to develop low carbon supply, you will need to develop equipment like cars and other appliances, and therefore you will, that will call a lot on the supply chain. And you will have bottlenecks, you will have negative impacts on prices. If you aim for too much, you actually won't succeed, because there will be bottlenecks and obstacles. So sufficiency and efficiency, in our view, are key to succeed in electrification and reindustrialization. And that is something we try to show on the European level. This brought us to a lot of recommendations. I don't want to discuss them. Obviously, we recommend that sufficiency is much more thought about, included in national plans, including in European governance. I want to comment this this graph, which shows in lighter blue the share of sufficiency-related recommendations in climate citizen assemblies in different countries, and in dark blue, the share of sufficiency-related recommendations or policies in the national plans of the governments. And it simply shows that citizens, when put in a deliberative framework, seem to be much more ready for sufficiency under the condition that it is organized, as I emphasized earlier, much more ready for sufficiency than policymakers tend to think or pretend to think, because they don't want to encompass the kind of changes that it means. And I just concluding on some further developments based on that clever scenario, two developments which we are very happy with and proud of. The first one is, I mean, it started a kind of informal sufficiency coalition that, which we are one of the initiators of, that published earlier this year a sufficiency manifesto in Brussels that is now signed by almost 100 very diverse organizations. And it calls for sufficiency to be the the common factor in all political agendas, because it's the common factor in solving all the dimensions of the crisis. The environmental one, the social one, the economic one in the sense that I just mentioned for electrification, and of course geopolitical one. And I would also say the democratic one based on the graph I just showed. And the second one, it's recent news, but we are very proud of it, and actually it is important because it will help sufficiency makes its way through the work of IPCC, for instance. Thanks to academic colleagues, mostly from Germany, a scientific paper on the clever scenario was just published in Nature Communication last month. And I think that is a good and a positive conclusion for me before we can talk. Thank you very much.